This meeting is being recorded.
So we are going live. We are going to go live now. Oh my God, what happened now? There is an error.
So, Gypsy, it is recording.
It is recorded. It is being recorded, but we have an error in the Facebook Live. So I don't want to waste time. Let us continue with this, and we'll edit and we'll do the YouTube and we'll share. We'll share. Don't worry. So, welcome to the panel discussion session of World Multicultural Festival 2022. The topic is multi-faith versus multicultural. Are they the same? A multi-faith society supports the spiritual well-being of everyone on campus and provides opportunities for people to learn from each other through interfaith dialogue. A multi-faith society provides freedom of religion or belief, including the ability to worship in peace and security. To be multi-faith is to feel an affinity with aspects of more than one religion, philosophy, or worldview, and to believe that no one is superior to the others. Multi-faith is a positive design employed to facilitate openness and mutual understanding of religious traditions' distinctiveness. What is multiculturalism then? Multiculturalism refers to the state of a society or the world in which there exists numerous distinct ethnic and cultural groups seen to be politically relevant and a program or policy promoting such a society. Multiculturalism promotes the cultures, races, and the ethnicities, particularly those of minority groups, who deserve special acknowledgement of their differences within a dominant political culture. Multiculturalism is the coexistence of diverse cultures, where culture includes racial, religious, or cultural groups and is manifested in customary behaviors, cultural assumptions and values, patterns of thinking, and communicative styles. Before we go to the panel discussion, I need to introduce the panel moderator and MC of today, Sam Bhalasarsaran, our very good old friend and a community leader. So Sam is an active member in the community, in the multicultural community, of course. Sam has dedicated her life to the community here in Ottawa and beyond. Sam is currently working as a senior advisor at the Department of Justice. She has worked and managed numerous projects, including Canadian energy projects, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Indigenous Justice Strategy, G7, G20, and International Energy Project conferences, and numerous other international affairs. She also runs a small business with her husband. She's currently serving as the founder, president, and chief executive officer of the Canadian South Asian Women's Chamber of Commerce, as well as holds board of director positions with the Ottawa Community Housing Foundation, the Ottawa Youth Service Board, and serves as an adjudicator with the Canadian Broadcasting Standards Council. Sam has previously served as the chair of the Champlain Maternal Newborn Regional Program, chair of the Patient and Family Advisory Council with the Ottawa Hospital, and served as a member of numerous other committees at the Ottawa Hospital and CHEO. Sam had also done work with the Canadian International Peace Project and served as a member of the National Anti-Racism Council of Canada, NARCC, and as a member of the Network of Indian Professionals. In 2018, she was elected as the National Party Secretary of the Liberal Party of Canada, where she also continues to serve. During her postgraduate studies, where she earned a degree specializing in political science and public administration, Sam continued to volunteer with the Liberals in various ridings, organizing many women's clubs and working with a number of MPs in their constituents' offices. In addition to having worked with many members of parliament and federal ministers in 2003, Sam was elected as the director of the National Women's Liberal Commission, where she also provided support to the Indigenous peoples commissioned at the Liberal Party of Canada's national headquarters in Ottawa. She has served as the Vice President for the Carlton Riding Association, Vice President, Ontario for the NWLC and Interim President of NWLC, and much more. In the 2022 Ontario general election, Sam stood as the candidate for the Ontario Liberal Party in Ottawa, West Nepean. Sam and her husband, Nav, of nearly 18 years, have two beautiful boys, Ishan and Nivan. She's a dedicated and proud mother who hopes that her children will embrace the good values that she has helped to teach them, and that they will have the same opportunities to serve Canadians as she has had so far and continues to do so. Thank you so much, Sam, to be with us today. I hand over the stage to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gypsy. First of all, thank you for doing this. I think it's such an important platform and an important subject that we talk about now. I've had the opportunity to meet most of our panel on a personal level, some like Dr. Merchant, who helped my children almost 12 years ago. Dr. Jamal, him and I, we've had a great relationship we've built over the years. Ruben and I, a friendship. So I'm honored to be here today, meeting all these other community builders. Mr. Khan and I have had a conversation before. We've met through some of our communities as well. And to be in the grace of someone like Elder McGregor, and Marcella, who is such a big community worker herself. So today, I'm really honored that we're sitting here talking about this very important subject in our times today, the topic multi-faith versus multicultural, which is very interesting because this is, sometimes they're both mistaken for one or the other, or they're seen as intertwining. So it would be very interesting to see what your perceptions are on this and what you think. And, you know, maybe there is something in here we haven't thought about, and it will be here at this platform today that we can discuss and let our viewers hear. Everybody here comes with a very unique perspective, very different communities and very different backgrounds. So it'll be very interesting to see how and what transpires today. So without further ado, I'd like to start by introducing Elder Verna McGregor. Elder McGregor is from the First Nation Algonquin community of Kitigan, Zibi, Anishinabek, which is approximately 120 kilometers north of Ottawa. Ottawa and Gatineau form part of the Algonquin Nation's traditional unceded territory, which we are on today. Verna has remained firmly grounded in her community and nation by being a part of the group of traditional grandmothers, Coco Misag, and elders. This includes the importance of promotion of retention of the Algonquin language and culture, which is also important when addressing issues from cultural perspectives. Welcome, Elder McGregor.
Oh, I muted myself. Miigwech Sam, nice to meet you, and thank you, Gypsy, for the great teaching in the beginning already. I have to admit, when I first heard the multi-faith versus multicultural, I had to think about that for quite a while. It's quite an interesting dynamic. But before I go into as well, when we start our gatherings here as part of protocol on our traditional lands, is we do an opening. And what I've done is I had a little smudge that I lit. I also have a little offering here. And again, this is part of our cultural understanding, is why do we smudge? And I send virtual smudges to you too, as well as that it's our connection from the physical world to the unseen world, to our ancestors and all of creation. So again too, as well, that's part of what you would say, part of our culture. And what I do with that afterwards is I offer this back to the earth. And again, our understandings and culture is that it was this whole dynamic tied to the land and the earth. So before I begin, overall, I was thinking, what's the correlation between faith and culture? So in the broadest sense of the word, faith and culture are inextricably connected, because a culture is always an expression of the faith which informs it. So you have your overall belief, which guides your faith. And then we have our expressions of that faith, which I'm doing now. And again, too, as well. So there's such a diverse dynamic. And with what the elders mentioned when I was sitting with them throughout the years is that it's having respect for everyone's belief in the creator or God. And then that's where the culture comes in, provided to as well that they're not harming your fellow human or the earth too as well. So again, so that sometimes contradicts the issue of faith and culture, sometimes contradicts each other, and sometimes it is difficult to reconcile. So here we are today. So I look forward to this discussion. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say a little prayer in Algonquin to honor us coming together today. And so I say, miigwech kishimanido, onjene gashkitochima ondose koshe nongomo mekakina pamatsajik, wido kwakakina, shwen mishno, miigwech oje kakina gagishenda no shemam de gen in the kimenon shkaki question castle in the kimenon, wido kwakakina pamatsajik onje nagdo aban kakina guch in the kimenon, miigwech oje kakina tekishago, miigwech oje ya kakina, nibi punksing CB saigon kichigagam. Miigwechonje ya ishkode gagimishin chiminopchitoya widokwagi kwawak onje nagado wabdan kakina nibi widokwagi ninwa gonje nagado wabdan kakina guch ishkode miigwechonje na sewen kagimishin chiminopmatsian shwen mishnon widokwa kakina nijinwan daganak shwen mishnon miigwech miigwech is thank you. And what I do is I go around the medicine wheel, and I don't have my medicine wheel with me. And we have our own creation story. And that's tied to, I guess, faith or spirituality. And one of the teachings of that is that there were, it represents the four directions, the four seasons, the four stages of your earth walk here, but it represents the four colors of people on this earth. And regardless of our differences, our faith, our language, our history, regardless of that, what binds us together is that we're all connected to this earth. And we all have a responsibility to look after the earth. And we were all given what the elders say is original instructions in looking after the earth. But some nations have fallen off course. And so it's to remind, there was a prophecy saying that it's up to the red people to remind the people too that they were given instructions to be caretakers too. So again, that's our spirituality. And again too, with colonization, our faith or spirituality was outlawed. And very honored to be with you too as well, Sam, because there's a meeting next week too, and we're talking about how does our ceremony and spirituality tie to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, because again too as well, because of the outlawing of our beliefs. And the Catholicism in Canada is the major, the majority, holds the majority in terms of understanding of the population. But again, because our understandings were sort of pushed aside, that's where this UNDRIP might be so important too as well, in the right to practice as well, but also in respecting everybody else's belief. The other thing with the elders, we said too, when we've welcomed so many different faiths to our territories, our lands, our traditional lands here. And our understanding is too as well, all the earth is sacred, but there are more sacred areas that are more significant for us. So our church was not made of mortar. Our church was also these sacred spaces, these sacred areas. And again, too, as well, how does this UNDRIP come into play in accessing these? Because we were also restricted to, at one time, we needed a pass to leave our reserve, let alone access our sacred areas. So again, that's that as we have more multi-faith and multicultural, um, there's a concern too as well that it's making room for the resurgence of our spirituality on our traditional lands, because this is our place while a lot of the newcomer multi-faith also have their own homelands to connect back to. So this is so important too, and so maybe this is why this multi-faith, multiculturalism is important, because I noticed too, as we have more multiculturalism, there's more of an of not an understanding, but also a return of also an opening for our beliefs to also return as well. So, and that goes back with this, I think this UNDRIP plays an important role. So on that note, I'm just going to close there, and I look forward to the other conversations as well. So I say miigwech, which is thank you.
Miigwech, Elder. Everything you said really does resonate. I don't think people sometimes realize until we really dig deeper that a lot of our cultures are intertwined or are very similar. And as I've been quite involved with Indigenous affairs, I've seen it. And even just in my past, we had a retreat a few weeks, about a month ago now, and just that was a real almost an epiphany for me that our cultures are so tied together, and we need to respect each other in that light and ensure that everybody, whether it's Indigenous or someone's South Asian or Middle Eastern, Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, Christian, Catholic, doesn't matter. We're all one. And I think this is a really important point. And hearing from you and about ceremony and how important interfaith is and our Indigenous communities are to our Canada alone is, you know, just a beautiful thing, and is just really appreciated. And I'm so happy that we're trying to right all of the wrongs. And I do, from my heart, also say sorry for all of the things that Indigenous communities have gone through the past.
Oh,
So moving on, our next panelist is the ever so wonderful Dr. Pradeep Merchant. Dr. Merchant is a site chief of the Division of Neonatology at the Ottawa Hospital Civic Campus and the medical director of the Rich Little Special Care Nursery for nearly 25 years. I know because my son was with him, as I was saying. And a little bit of a side note, he is one of the softest, kindest, professional, focused doctors I've ever met in my life. I did not know him before I met him in the NICU. So that's just a personal blurb from me. He has dedicated his professional life to the health and well-being of mothers and their infants. In addition, he has devoted his personal time to truly significant and highly successful volunteer efforts in the community across the nation and around the globe. Dr. Merchant has been appointed to the prestigious Order of Canada for his lifetime of achievement and contribution on November 16, 2021. As an active member of the board at the Ottawa Hospital Foundation, Dr. Merchant has engaged with business leaders and philanthropists to develop a modern and progressive new civic campus at the Ottawa Hospital. He is a founding volunteer in establishing the Indo-Canadian Ottawa Business Chambers, ICOBC. He has also arranged fundraising galas where he has raised over $2 million for various causes. Along with other like-minded Canadians from across the country, he founded the Canada-India Centre for Excellence, CICE, in Science, Technology, Trade, and Policy at the renowned Carleton University here in Ottawa. He is dedicated in supporting health, children, education, literacy, and economic development with the goal of relieving global poverty. Welcome, Dr. Merchant.
Thank you, Sam, for that very kind introduction. I don't know what all I deserve, but thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Gypsy, for assembling such prominent citizens of our city in reflecting on what we talk in terms of multi-faith versus multiculturalism. Now, as all of you now heard, I'm not a theologist, so I'm not going to reflect a lot about the faith component of it, but I am part of the cultural identity of the city, and so I will reflect on multiculturalism, as well as I will give you some reflection of what I see as a faith interacting with the culturalism and where we need to go, or at least from a humanity point of view and from the political presence point of view, where have we come? And where do we need to actually go beyond this one? So just to start with what Gypsy had said, the multiculturalism is a view. It's a view that cultures, race, and ethnicity needs to be acknowledged. Specifically, a minority needs to be acknowledged within that dominant political culture. And I think, Gypsy, you just said that. But multiculturalism is a response. The way it has evolved over a period of time, because we know the faith has been there for thousands of years, but the multiculturalism conversation has recently actually sprung up. I would say post World War II, because we started to talk about how we as a humanity need to get together. And we realized that beyond faith and the belief, we also had ability to function as a society. And that created the culture. So the multiculturalism is both a response to the fact of cultural pluralism, which is what exists in today's modern democracy. And the way to compensate all this culture of past exclusion, sometimes discrimination, and of course, some of those operations which Sam, you just spoke about, and our elders reflected on it, exactly how we have come to the stage where we are. So multiculturalism, in my mind, seeks the inclusion of the views and the diverse views of minority within the mainstream conversation so that we can actually create the policy and we can create our action which will serve to all. Having said that, it also creates challenges because multiculturalism itself, and as I think Gypsy, you're right, there are maybe many people who doesn't like the word multiculturalism, and they may in fact have very sort of adverse opinion on it. But what is the challenge? In contrast to people's belief, multiculturalism is a challenge to liberal democracy or liberal ideology. Let me actually explain what I mean. In liberal democracies, we want all the citizens, no matter what race, religion, or sex, we want all the citizens to have the equal rights. But what multiculturalism is asking from a political dominant culture, that we need to actually get a special acknowledgement to the minority who has been oppressed or discriminated or have not been allowed to actually progress further. So you need to actually balance that conversation in both ways to say, okay, once we do multiculturalism and support them, are we also supporting the dominant culture who may in fact think left behind? And case in point at what we see down south in America, in terms of the cultural and the political polarization, which is based on the multiculturalism or the not so multiculturalism. So it's an important crossroad we have actually come in terms of multiculturalism. However, one needs to understand multiculturalism view cannot be taken as an abstract view. We need to really take that in the context of a race, a religion, and a culture as well. So you take the multicultural as a saying that it is Hindu cultural heritage right now. It's the month of November. We cannot celebrate anything else. No, that's not what we are saying. We are just identifying that as a Hindu cultural heritage right now in November in Canada. So rather than embracing the traditional liberal image of the melting pot, which is what I think America wants people to have, you come in and you actually assimilate into the dominant culture. I think I would actually give an analogy that is in Canada, we are like a tossed salad. So we are in the salad put together. We can identify each and every part. We have lettuce, we have tomatoes, we have cucumber, we have everything else, but it is still a one dish which we are proposing to the people. So the difference between the melting pot where you need to lose your identity and become part of the culture, while versus you have a tossed salad culture where you can still continue to identify yourself. What's the challenge with that? The challenge is very important. Because again, when I lose my identity, I also tend to lose my belief. And the belief actually takes me towards my faith. So do I need to actually let go my faith, and I need to let go my identity for the cultural assimilation? So the idea of the multiculturalism into the faith intertwine with each other. For example, let me take you down south again. The right policy or political agenda is based on some of the religious faith and religious observation, while the liberals are on the left side are faced very much about the liberal views of equal right, LGBTQ, the gender identity, and the poverty and the social justice. Having said that, there's really no winner here, because you just see the midterm election and you see 50-50. It's the polarized, completely divided country. And if you think America is the beacon of democracy and a beacon of hope, and if that country is so divided between the two diametrically opposite views, then you can imagine, I think we are at the crossroad. We need to really have this conversation. So in addition to the individual rights, some have advocated for special groups to have their autonomous governance structure, like what we have actually provided the indigenous group. They do have their autonomous structure. But how far can you extend that to the minority? Some of the other religious group might actually say, I am being oppressed. I cannot really do all my cultural activities which I want to do. I need to give in my governance structure as well. So it is a politically hot potato conversation in terms of how we want to do it. So how are we attending to it? Well, I think what we did was, I would say the late or the beginning of the 20th century, we began to change teaching. We started from elementary school to the university to the PhD, and we started to include the involvement of the minority, the contribution of the minority in literature, the art, and the culture. We started to move away from the Eurocentric, colonization-based culture and saying, no, there are other people who actually came to make this country so successful. They contributed to our cultural views and cultural enhancement of this country. And I think that's where we began to do it. But again, let me take you to the down south. We have come to the crossroad again. As you know, the race theory has been rejected by the right-wing parties, and they do not want to address the race theory. The critical race theory is a huge issue in America, while I know it is not a big issue in Canada, because we have embraced multiculturalism versus how the US actually sees that. Now, the multicultural privilege for a certain common group do pose challenges, as I said, because potentially it can erode a common good in favor of a community at large. So if I'm focusing only on the multiculturalism and on a small minority group, what do we do with the dominant group? And I think the dominant group do feel, or they are feeling, that they are being neglected by the political elite because they are now focusing too much on the multiculturalism. So what I remind the panelists, and I like to actually hear the views as well, that as much as we need to support the multiculturalism, and I'm part of the multicultural fabric, we need to understand the mainstream politics and mainstream dominant culture also has its own place, and we need to understand to work with that. We should not make multiculturalism as identity politics. And that's where I feel the challenges actually comes into it, because then the multiculturalism is seen as a political ploy to get some discounts from the dominant culture, but not be part of the culture, part of the national identity. I'll give you a point. Just before the pandemic, in 2015, on Canada Day, on Parliament Hill, the reporter was standing by and was asking all the people who are going by waving the Canadian flag and saying, tell me, what does it mean to be a Canadian? And they paused, they reflected. They couldn't really answer that question at all. What does it mean by Canadian? Well, no, I'm a Hindu Canadian. I said, yeah, no, I understand, that's your religious identity. But what do you mean? How do you identify? Well, I follow the law and I follow the rules of the Parliament Hill. Whatever they pass, I actually follow that. So is Canadian identity is a legal identity? Is it a faith identity? Or is it a cultural identity? And I think it becomes very challenging, because that's where the faith or a religion versus the country gets into play. And I'll just make a few points on that one, Sam, if you can allow me. Do I have another minute or so? Yeah. The international community came together after the World War II. That's when I think people realize. Remember again, the religion, as you all know, has been thousands and thousands of years old. People have developed belief over millenniums. But actual culturism actually came into play after the Second World War, when we realized that as a humanity, we are killing each other. And so that's when the international community came together to find a new way to impact with each other to our shared humanity. This meant identifying the rights needed to protect in order to recognize each person's individual dignity. And that individual dignity came from our faith, which we believed in, because that faith gave me my identity and it gave me my dignity of actually following. So what they did set out to say, the right to life, right to liberty, right to education, and equality before the law is the common denominator for everyone, as well as the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. And that was the most important part where the International Bill of Rights actually set it out. With the Universal Declaration of Human Rights at the center, the basis of modern human rights law and its standard against the governments are held accountable for. Not perfectly, not always consistently, but we do account them for the human rights law. But what is more important? The religion gives you the belief, but religion does not give you power to actually do everything what the religious belief is in the society at large. The case in point is, let's look at Iran. The religious give them belief that you need to wear certain fabrics. But the people now do not agree with that because the society culturally has moved on by reflecting on the life. And so there is a challenge now. So the belief cannot be construed as it is the conduct or it is the way to live life. And so that's the difference. And so the reason why I was giving you the Canadian example is primarily because our identity is the law-abiding identity. Our eventual identity is we follow, we elect our political leaders, we put them up, they form the laws and legislation based on consultation with all of us, like us, and then create a common law which we all agree upon so that we can continue to believe what we believe in. But as far as our conduct concerned is out in the society has to be under that law. If the law allows you to do that, we will have no. And the law can be debated, can be replaced, and can be renewed. It always is changing. That is not a constant. It is changes. The only constant here is your belief in your faith in a good humanity and a good society. So with that, thank you, Sam, for giving me the opportunity.
Dr. Merchant, those words were phenomenal. It makes me think a lot about my life. My parents came to Canada in 1971. I was born here. I speak Hindi and Punjabi. I understand Urdu. I speak English and now French. So I've had to embrace so many different cultures. I work with Indigenous people every day. So, you know, we see a lot of culture, but we also see a lot of religion. Now I'm raising my two boys and every day is a struggle. I try to speak Punjabi, they answer in English, they ask about our culture, but they ask about other religions and cultures too, and we let them embrace everything. I was very lucky that my parents, being Punjabi Sikh, they still embraced other cultures. My mom had a picture of Jesus where we had all of our gurus. So I grew up in a place where everything was accepted. I was one of those females who go have your education, then we'll arrange marriage you when it's time. I did not have an arranged marriage, by the way, but it was a different time. Culture was very different in the 80s and 70s, and religion was it was us preserving our culture. Even now, many cultures do that. You talked about identity politics. And identifying, you're absolutely right. And there is a lot of identity politics coming from someone who is deeply involved in politics. I see it every day. People have asked me, why aren't you with this group or that group? I said, my community isn't mine. My community is everyone. my writing or my work is done with every identity, every politic, every culture, every religion. That's what makes us a community. And I think that's where the strength is. And so hearing your words today reinforces that we need to continue in our work in making our communities one, but also to ensure that we're highlighting those great, wonderful communities and the religions and how they interweave. So thank you. I'd like to move on to Dr. Jamal Al-Sharif, a very close friend of mine and a really big community advocate and worker. He does a lot in our communities. Dr. Jamal Al-Sharif is an active member of the community, super volunteer, and global citizen. He has been awarded from all levels of government of Canada and other governments. He is the founder and president of Humans for Peace Institution. Humans for Peace Institution is a not-for-profit organization, NGO, that works with the UN. Its members are peace lovers who are inspired to work together for peace, social justice, equality, and human rights to promote peace around the world by standing against all forms of wars and helping refugees. He promotes multiculturalism by organizing intercultural and interfaith dialogues. Welcome, Dr. Al-Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, peace upon all of you. I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking from unceded and surrounded Algonquin and Anishinaabe land. Miigwech to Elder McGregor for her prayer. I also would like to thank Ms. Gypsy Gosh, the directors and the founder of Multicultural Festival, World Multicultural Festival. For sure, all my presenters, audience, and my dear friend, Sam. Thank you, Sam, for this introduction. I would like you to close your eyes. Please do close your eyes for a second. Picture yourself in a world with no differences, where people are free to come and go, worry-free where they can, and they are feeling safe. Imagine that this world where we can feel like home. Whenever we go, the respect, the empathy are the most important words in everyone's life, where people embrace your culture and the way you are as you are. Don't worry if you don't feel that way. You are not alone. Now you can open your eyes. On October 8th, 1971, Canada became the first country in the world to adopt multiculturalism as an official policy. It became a law later in 1988. In this 50-year sense, the idea of Canadian multiculturalism has been reinterrupted, expanded, and even challenged. We have celebrated diversity here. This is not found anywhere else. I mean, it's not really a question of rules and laws, but it's actually in the spirits that we cherish in Canada. I think Canada still have very rich tradition and future for multiculturalism in the world. But the million-dollar question is, what makes multiculturalism successful? Is it our Prime Minister greeting refugees at the airport? Is it the annual ethnic summer festival in our neighborhoods? Or school day when every students can get their country flag raised in that place? Let's go back a little bit. Canada's history in general has been characterized as swinging from discomfort with one group to discomfort with another. It started with the indigenous brothers and sisters going to Jewish people, then Chinese and Japanese, etc. But it didn't stop there. Now it's not a history, it's something happening today. For example, Loi 21 or Law 21 in Quebec that discriminate against many minorities in Quebec province. In many ways, multiculturalism was an economic policy, and it worked out responsibly well for Canada helping the country meet its needs in labor, growing population, and keeping us young. But for immigrants, it's a little bit complicated. First generation immigrants are selected for their skills to come to Canada, but after arrivals, they face massive barrier to enter their field, such as requirement for Canadian credential to work and bias against lack of Canadian experience. Believe me, the first 10 years can be especially tough and challenging. We need actually to work together to understand the meaning of multiculturalism. We need many things to bring those newcomers into the real Canadian market and life. We need blind hiring for people to have fair opportunities, not only in the public sectors, but also in the private industry. Do some Canadians only like multiculturalism when everyone stays in their own groups? A poll 5 years ago revealed like 68% of Canadians say that minorities should do more to fit in. Many things are in hand of politicians and political parties. So are we going to see party who stand with immigrants and multiculturalism more than another? Are we going to see a party who stand against immigrants? And we can see that now. We like to think multiculturalism as a celebration of differences, but let's be honest, not everyone is even willing to accept differences. The figure of Statistic Canada shows an increase in hate crimes from 2014 to 2015 within 83% motivated by hatred of race, ethnicity, or religion. In conclusion, I think in Canada, we have border discussion and various communities. We need to have discussions about what is our Canadian value? What do we want as the future of our nation? And I think, frankly, we are in a good position to do that. Actually, if we want to have an honest intellectual conversation about multiculturalism, where we are with this words and multi-faith, we have to start with the past, change the present, and work hard for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamal. That was really enlightening. You touched on students coming here. I think many of us know somebody or have lived it in our own homes when, like I was saying, either our parents came at that time, different time, but same challenges. Now it's the students who are coming. We see the students. I helped hundreds of students in Montreal when they were going through some challenges just recently. Same thing. And so, you know, how do you really support them through all of this? And I think politicians need to do a better job of that. We're quick to bring them here, but we're not quick to give that support in addition to that 6 months to a year. And a lot of families get lost after that. They feel the loneliness and they feel the disconnect. So some of those things you talked about are really important that we look at in the future, and we continue to try and do better. So thank you. I'd like to move on to my dear friend and one of the strongest women I know, Dr. Ruba Fatal. Ruba Fatal has a PhD in political economy and is a public servant, currently serving as a senior economist and policy advisor at Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. She was a part-time professor at the University of Ottawa and Carleton University. She is a community builder, author of several academic and children's books, a dedicated volunteer, and a mother of 3 beautiful kids. Dr. Fatal founded the Canada Carleton Small Business Network in 2015 to help connect and empower local small businesses, which she has chaired and grew to include over 1,000 local businesses. She is serving as board of director director to the Western Ottawa Community Resource Center, the Canada Food Cupboard, and the Trail West Community Association, where she organizes numerous community events and activities. She also serves her community as Neighborhood Watch Coordinator. She has helped raise funds for Crystalis House, a women's shelter in Canada, and was a Rotary Club board member where she led the Canada for Refugee campaign, raising $75,000 to sponsor Syrian refugee families in Canada. Dr. Fattal's efforts are focused on ending violence against women, eliminating food insecurity, and promoting diversity and inclusion around board tables. She actively promotes inclusiveness and integration through her work with newcomers of various backgrounds. Dr. Fattal was recognized with many awards, including the RBC Top 25 Women's Immigrant Award in 2019, the Welcoming Ottawa Ambassadors Award in 2019, the Remarkable Women of Ottawa Award in 2022, as well as being inducted into the Order of Ottawa in 2020. And she is a dear friend of mine and works excessively hard in the community. So welcome, Ruba.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sam. First of all, great moderation, of course, by a great leader here in the community. Gypsy, I would like to thank you also for hosting us and everyone here on the panel for joining us on this afternoon. And I would like also to reiterate my acknowledgement that we are on the unceded territory of the Algonquin people and thank our Indigenous hosts for having us here. To start with, I would like to go back to the main question, because when I read the question, it really made me think and ponder, like, what is the difference between multiculturalism or multicultural and multi-faith? And what does that mean here to our context in Canada? Now, I'm not going to say that I am going to be as eloquent as Dr. Pradeep, correct? Pradeep Marchant, in the way that he explained. And I have to say, like, it resonated a lot with me, what he was saying. I think you have reflected a lot more on multiculturalism than I have done over the years. But there are some threads that I want to follow from what you were discussing. For example, 20 years ago, when I was at McGill University, I was at a class we were studying, the course was Canadian politics and culture. And I recall the prof, and I was just a young student at the time, and we immigrated in 1994, so only 30 years here in Canada, and you can see still I have the accent and all of that. So I come as an immigrant. And at the class, the prof asked, what is Canadian culture? And I was a bit surprised, like, what is Canadian culture? So I started looking around me, like, to look at the Canadians who were in the classroom, who I perceived as Canadian, just based on the superficial characteristics, of course, of what we would imagine a Canadian would be. And to my surprise, a few of them said, as jokingly, particularly the Canadians in the class, they said, we're not Americans. That was, like, in a nutshell what they were trying to say. So, but I thought to myself, so what is that? Because I didn't know how to compare the two anyway. And as we went deeper and deeper in it, the idea of the salad bowl versus the melting pot, of course, was introduced. That here in Canada, we are a salad bowl. Every individual culture is celebrating their cultural identity, but we are not melting together to the point where we are assimilating and forgetting about where we came from. It didn't mean much at the time to me. You know, you're coming new, you barely even understand your own identity at a young age of that sort. And in a way, when you are coming at a certain age as teenager or after teenagers, and all you want to do is to assimilate, not only to integrate, to not feel different, to actually lose the accent. Now I'm embracing my accent after, I don't know, 30 years. But at the time, especially at the time of 9/11, when it happened, the 9/11, nobody knew at the time before 9/11 where Syria was. Somebody would ask me, where are you from? I would say Syria. They would say, oh, do you speak Spanish? They thought it was in South America. Suddenly you're saying Syria, and they know not only Syria, they know Fallujah, they know Lebanon, they know everything, you know, like they know all your backgrounds and where you come from, and you are seen in one lens as this threat. You're seen as perceived as the threat. And at that moment, you don't want to be different. You don't want to celebrate your multiculturalism, or you don't want to celebrate your distinguished culture. What you want to do is just to hide under the invisibility of assimilation. Why this is important is because it really blurred the lines between culture and religion. Now, while I come from a family who is extremely liberal, we are secular, we don't really practice any particular religion. In fact, the origin of my parents are from Lebanon, and who moved to live in Syria. So they're already multicultural in that sense, from the move that they had, like from one place to another, from their ancestors. And the fact that they were already secular in a very religious setting back in Saudi Arabia, because I did not live in Syria. In fact, I lived in Saudi Arabia from the age of 2 until we immigrated, except for 1 year in Lebanon. So we are already feeling as minorities back there. And that is partially because of our religious beliefs that are different from perhaps the majority or the framework that we are in. So here we are in Canada, and here I am like, okay, again, with this identity crisis that we're thinking about, and how do we solve this identity crisis? Because 9/11 put an emphasis that everyone who comes from the Middle East or that area or that region comes from a specific background, from a specific religion, and is perceived as a threat. So for years, I was trying to avoid this question of multiculturalism, of what does it mean to be faith? And I tried to shy away from it. But it wasn't just me. This is what I'm trying to reflect here. It was a generation on it. All of the Arab students I remember, and also those who are from Afghanistan, Pakistan area, they all, I think, had similar reaction. So we come up in a very specific time in Canadian history. But at the moment, right now, we are coming out at the other end, where we are starting now to re-embrace our cultures, to re-embrace where we come from. And still we are struggling with this idea, okay, are we accepted though? I realize that there is multiculturalism in Canada. There is this idea of salad bowl. Everyone is at the surface respected. Politically also, there is this dialogue about respect, but how deep does it go? Are we seen as equal at the table? Or is this just still superficial kind of accepting of our cultures and our differences? And how do we institutionalize and internalize that superficialness, that superficial respect to something deeper than that? I would really encourage more involvement, in fact, with those who do not, like, for example, to have in this panel, those who oppose the idea of multiculturalism, who are completely like, well, because sometimes I talk to Canadians, like, you know, what they call themselves, the old stock Canadians, and say, well, we are all immigrants. Why are you making a fuss about multiculturalism? Or why is multiculturalism important? We're all immigrants anyway. So it would be interesting to also talk to people from different perspectives who are not maybe from diverse backgrounds. All this to go to the fact that I do see the idea of multiculturalism and multi-faith as a question of freedom. Why is that? Is because although we are expressing our differences in our culture and our differences in our faith, what we believe or we don't believe, it is still an idea of freedom. Where does my freedom end and the other freedom starts? So multiculturalism and multi-faith, it is still an idea of you are free to practice your culture and to practice your faith and your religion as long as it doesn't infringe on other people's cultures and religions. And that respect that you mentioned, Dr. mentioned, is the respect of the law. I think that is really what makes us all Canadians, or what is that nuance of what is it to be Canadian? Is that kind of respect for where is my freedom? Where does my freedom end? Where does the other freedom start? And it's a very important topic, I think, especially with youth who are struggling with the identity. I was a professor of the university, 4 years at Ottawa University, and part-time few years at Carleton University. And I have met many students particularly from different culture, who come, and I can see in their eyes that they are struggling with their identity the same way I did struggle 20 years ago. Because at home, the parents are coming with a rigid kind of culture that is not changing from where they come from, although probably perhaps where they come from, it's already changing, yet they're imposing something on their kids that is not flexible. And I see these struggles with the youth, and I see the depression happen. And it's not a surprise that we have depression in our society, that youth is going through depression and through anxiety. I think there is a lot of expectation on them. So it's a very important question. And I really thank Gypsy. I don't know how you came up with this question, but you really made me think about something that I haven't thought about before. And it's a very complex question to address. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ruba. You hit on some really interesting points that resonate with me as well. First of all, never lose your accent. Don't even try.
I tried.
Okay. Did you hear me?
I have to embrace it.
Yeah, never try to lose that accent. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Talking about 9/11, that brings back some memories for me as well. Like I said, I was born and raised here, but my father, when he came in the 70s, he couldn't find work. He had those challenges. Every immigrant has the challenges. At that time, racism was tough, very tough. Not that it isn't now. And the story he would tell us is that he couldn't get a job. So he had to cut his hair. And for a Sikh man, that's a big one. So he had to cut his hair, shave his face. My mom didn't recognize him at the airport when she arrived. And he was able to get a job instantly. Now, fast forwarding to 9/11, I remember my father was a mechanic. He had an automotive business, rebuilt engines and whatnot, very successful in Oshawa. And I remember when 9/11 hit, I was in Winnipeg and I called him and I said, Dad, I don't want you to put on a turban. I used to call him a part-time Sikh because he would wear a turban only at cultural events or religious events, weddings, things like that. And I told him, I go, for a little while, please don't, because people were not educated about religion. And there was a lot of blame at that time. I still remember a woman with a hijab was sitting in the middle of the street, a young woman, and you can see fear in her eyes just after. And that still today sticks with me. So I remember that really well. And the education of cultures and religions and how we intertwine, so important in our day today. And I struggle with it with my children all the time. And I sometimes wonder, am I doing enough for them? And I think this is something we all see. Even students, here's another example. Talking to students who come from India, I try to have a conversation in Hindi or Punjabi. They would want to speak only in English to me, like I'm speaking a different language when I know they're newly immigrated. They don't want to speak their language because they're trying to disconnect, to try and fit so much into this culture of the Canadian culture that they want to forget that culture. They won't even want to talk about where they are. And here we are, born and raised here, wanting to be embracing our cultures and our religion and being every part of it and making sure that we're highlighting multiculturalism and preserving all of our communities and cultures. So that's a really important thing you brought up, Ruba. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'd like to give the floor to Daljit Nirman. Unfortunately, he could not be with us today as something has come up. However, I would like to share his bio with you, and we have a short video that he's given us. Daljit Nirman is a practitioner of law with over 3 decades of diverse legal experience, is a former adjunct professor of law, author, community builder, and founding director of Cooking Up Community Services, which fundraises for local charities in Ottawa. Daljit has been a former board of director with Okiso and United Way East Ontario. Daljit is the recipient of 2022 Community Builder Award from United Way East Ontario and was inducted to the Order of Ottawa in 2021. Daljit Nirman was appointed to the Ottawa Police Services Board on February 14, 2019 for a 3-year term until March 2022. Currently, he is the board director with the Snowsuit Fund of Ottawa. So again, another real community builder. He does a lot of work in the community and very well respected. So I'll turn it over to Gypsy to play his video.
Good afternoon to you all. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak on an issue which is very close to my heart. I will lay out some historical prospects in brief and practical steps to be initiated by the policymakers, which in my opinion may be a step in the right direction. There are two primary objections to multiculturalism. One is that multiculturalism privileges the good of certain groups over the common good, thereby potentially eroding the common good in favor of a minority interest. National unity could become impossible if people see themselves as members of ethnic or racial groups rather than as citizens of common country. The second is that multiculturalism undermines the notion of equal individual rights, thereby weakening the political value of equal treatment. Equal individual rights could be set aside or depreciated in a favor of rights that are possessed by the group. Multiculturalism raises other questions. There is the question of which cultures will be recognized. Some philosophers have worried that multiculturalism can lead to a competition between cultural groups all vying for recognition, and that this will further reinforce the dominance of the dominant culture. Such competition could even lead to a reaction in which the dominant culture sees itself as a struggling group in need of recognition and protection. A related concern is that actions that celebrate cultural diversity would be taken because of their popularity, but that actions that redress past discrimination would not be taken because of their threat to the dominant group's status. Many public institutions, including the Ontario Human Rights Commission, have found themselves having to rethink the protection of religious freedom and the promotion of religious diversity. They will need to counter traditional forms of intolerance and discrimination, be sensitive to emerging forms of intolerance rooted in transnational conflicts, remain attentive to the emerging confluence of racism and religious intolerance, and develop sensitivity to fingering Christian privilege. Finally, they will need to work towards a broader definition of religion that includes the diversity of religious belief and practice that we find in Canada today. I had worked on the issues of equality, diversity, and inclusion as member of the Ottawa Police Services Board, which has over 2,000 employees at the Ottawa Police Service, both sworn and civil. Based on my experience and study, I can suggest the following few measures which may reduce but not eliminate the incidence of racism and discrimination. First, stronger and deeper dialogue established with the key multicultural and multi-faith organizations across Canada who represent targeted, vulnerable, impacted communities to address racism. Community ambassadors are empowered to inform their communities about their rights, responsibilities, and remedies under our laws. Third, tailored and interactive events and education sessions that empower individuals and groups who have experienced racism. Fourth, deeper engagement with vulnerable communities in targeted and geographic areas to address these concerns. And finally, an evidence-based digital campaign that deploys messages or narratives that address these barriers to reporting racism, discrimination, and vilification. Thanks for your listening, and I wish to conclude by congratulating Gypsy Ghosh for being inducted to the Rolls of Order of Ottawa.
So he's one of my, I have to say something about Daljit ji. and some people who are here, I have to acknowledge. Mentorship from Daljit Nirman, Daljit Ji, Dr. Jamal, who are like my big brothers and friends. Like, I have to say big brother. And my sister, Marcella, Dr. Ruba Fatal, my brother from Central African Republic, Eric Tobzo. They are all my mentors, and Sam is a very good friend, and Sam has been supporting us with, I remember, Sam, you supported us with the panel discussions of culture and mental health, all the panel discussions which we did when there was a pandemic, and Sam has been, writing down the descriptions, and oh my God, she helped me a lot. I can't imagine how she helped me. So all of you are my mentors, and very good. And Dr. Pradeep Marchand, I want you to be my mentor now. I need your guidance. I need your support, your mentorship to continue this, not only festival. Festival is something which cannot cover the total aspect. We have to do something throughout the year and raise awareness about multi-faith and multiculturalism, and about the salad and the melting pot, about respecting each other. Let me take some time, Sam. Give me some time, because I have to say why this came to my mind. I have faced racism in my son's school. My son was in a Catholic school. And I'm saying this publicly, that there will be a YouTube, and everybody should know. I just immigrated, I started a business. Well, I am an educational manager. We have a school and a college under a trust in India. So I go back to India to work for 6 months. And whenever I'm here, I do my community work, and I promote all these things which are beautiful and brings cultures together. My mom looks after my son. So my son was in a school, and he was racialized because of his color, dark skin. And I was crying with my son. My son was ill. My son, Jamal, Dr. Jamal knows, even Marcella knows. So my son was going through a very bad phase in his life. And my husband was in India working. He still works in India. He's a lawyer. He's an author. He's a professor there. He doesn't want to come and settle because of the reason that he will not get the same status at the age of 45 plus. He did not come. He said, I will not come and start studying again, because he was 45 when I immigrated. I was like nearly 40. So I faced a lot of things which I cannot imagine. And this was one of the initiatives I took. I wanted to bring in parents together. I wanted to bring in races and religions and everybody together to do something together, and to make aware that you are bringing in immigrants, and you have to respect the immigrants. You cannot call any child, any brown child, Indian curry. He was called Indian curry. A video was made in his name, and it was distributed. My son cried every day. He stopped eating Indian curry because of this racism. He threw away all the curries from the refrigerator. I faced so much. And it's not only the brown, the Black students were also racial. And I saw this with my own eyes. And this happens still today. If we are not aware of our rights, our children will be having a bad future. We will destroy our children's future. We have to unite, be it Black, be it brown, come out of your barriers, break the barriers. You cannot live in a balloon. I have approached so many cultures, so many communities to come and perform, just to put a cultural table free of cost in the festival. I will not name the communities. They are so much confined in their balloons. They don't want to come and celebrate and know each other. And they're so confined within themselves. I've seen people who are against multiculturalism, who want to be confined within their cultures. And thus this initiative, this is just a small initiative. We have to do it more and more, and collaborate with multi-faith organizations, multicultural organizations. All of us should unite and do something together. We will see a bright future of our children, especially. Yes, Ruba, this happened to my child, and thus this initiative, Ruba. I'm very sad, but but I'm happy to celebrate multiculturalism. Till today, my son is so much introvert. I cannot even bring out my son to the, to the forefront. Dr. Jamal knows about it, actually. Personally, he's a friend. So these are the things which happen to everyone, and they don't express. I express, but they don't express. Sorry for the precious time, so we'll move on. Sam, let's move on.
Thank you, Gypsy. And what you're saying is exactly right. First of all, thank you for doing what you do to bring all these communities and cultures together. It's such an important part of what we do every day. I'm so sorry you and your family had to go through that. I know you and I spoke briefly about this too, but it's the hardest thing to watch your children go through this. I remember being called Paki when I was a child. And I see it more now than I have when I was, because as you're an adult, the realization is more there. Collaborating, you're absolutely right. The other one is education. Educating people is your biggest tool.
At the school level, racism is not born, it's taught at home, and the schools should teach anti-racism. School should teach there's no difference of color. And why is this color difference? It's because of the sun rays. It's because of the tan, because we are from the tropical countries, and we've come to the north. It's because of the tan, nothing else. That should be taught to all the children here, to children who are not tanned. They have to know how to respect. And then again, playing with white dolls. No. You should have brown dolls, black dolls. Actually, the saddest part, I have to say, Sam, saddest part is we are getting racialized within the racialized communities. Actually, there is racism amongst and between the racialized communities here. We don't support each other. We don't support the racialized communities being racialized ourselves. We think, oh, we are leaders. No. We are creating, we are creating a blunder. We will not know what will happen to our children. Our children will not get that job, will not get that promotion, will not get that salary. And why Mr. Khan will talk about that. I know Mr. Khan is aware of these things, and he works for that, for inclusivity in the public service. There is not even 5% representation in the top management level of immigrants and indigenous nowadays. And
right.
We have to work together. We have to support immigrants. We have to support each other, black and brown, and even indigenous. Let's come together and let's support each other. Please, whenever I'm very sad, there is not a single new black or a brown face in the council election. And immigrants have gone to vote for the whites. Immigrants have gone to vote for others. Why? Why there is no representation? People have started fighting elections. People have started coming forward. I always support. I supported Yvette in my, I know Catherine Cates, she's a good friend too, but I supported Yvette because I will always support an immigrant, a multicultural person who has struggled to be here. I supported Dr. Ruba Fatal. I supported Sam, and I will support all of you. If you want to become a representative, Gypsy will be here to support. I will campaign for you openly, I can promise. But there are no people who are supporting the immigrants. Otherwise, we would have seen some brown and black faces in the council. Ralston King is the only one who has won again.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And it all starts with all of us who work so deeply in the communities. So we've got work ahead of us. I'd like to keep moving because of time and respecting everybody's time with one of our very diligent and strong community leaders, Wahid Khan. He is the president of the Community of Federal Visible Minorities. Mr. Wahid Khan is the president of the Community of Federal Visible Minorities, an independent network that provides a platform to visible minorities in the federal public service to discuss their priorities, share information, and advocate on their behalf. He has a passion for public service, based on social justice and equality to serve all Canadians regardless of their ethnic origins, gender, background, and any other identities. In 2018, the Deputy Minister appointed Wahid as the first co-champion of mental health representing bargaining agents. The same year, Wahid was also appointed co-champion for respectful workplaces representing the bargaining agents, an initiative he had co-launched with the Union of Environmental Workers, PSAC, in 2016. Wahid is also the chair of ECC's Visible Minority Network. He was elected to the board of directors of the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada, PIPSIC, in 2018. In 2019, he served as the chair of PIPSIC Human Rights and Diversity Committee and introduced the AGM Code of Respect. In 2021, Wahid was re-elected to the PIPSIC board for another 3-year term and is serving as chair communications national capital in the National Capital Region and chair of Science Advisory Committee. In 2009 to 11, Wahid was deployed at Canada's mission to Afghanistan, where he led a joint Canadian and US team working with military officers to rebuild public sector capacity in Kandahar and to promote good governance and the rule of law. Wahid is a recipient of the Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee Medal, Canadian Forces General Service Medal, and the Minister of International Trade Citation of Excellence. Welcome, Wahid, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Thank you, Ms. Ghosh, for organizing this event and bringing together with these esteemed colleagues and listening to them. I can tell you that so far I've been listening and really learning new perspectives, and I really appreciate that. It's a learning opportunity for me. So even though I'm glad I'll be able to share some of my thoughts, but I'm looking for this as another learning opportunity for me. That's how we build. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we all gather today is the traditional unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin peoples have lived and continue to live on this land since time immemorial. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. I hope that we all can take time to reflect on how we can contribute in whatever way we can towards the reconciliation of with the indigenous people that have lived here well before all the immigrants started arriving. I also, as you mentioned, I'm a student of science as well, and I know that biodiversity is extremely important for the existence of not only human beings as a species, but for the whole life on Earth. There was a time, of course, that we felt that some of those species should be eliminated. And we have many examples of that, where people killed birds because they were eating grain, or people killed other organisms. We also have seen all the monoculturalism in crops, where you figured that let's pick the most productive crop and only grow that, and let's get rid of the rest of them. But now we are wiser. We know that the biodiversity is extremely important, and biodiversity is important for everybody. So likewise, multiculturalism and multi-faith, these are important not just for that particular culture, even though often I see that's what we try to do. We say, oh, these people have suffered and let's help them. What we fail to realize is that those who we want to help because we have made them suffer, we are doing it for our own good, because ultimately, who has the bigger stake in this country? The majority has the bigger stake in this country, and they're the ones who will benefit. To give you an example, there was a time when women were not at the decision-making table in Canada, right? Like you saw, it was the men who were running the country. The women were left with their things. And this was just a common feeling to say, yeah, women, they can just deal with the children and the house, and they just don't know how to run the affairs of the country or the businesses. But we have learned now. We have learned now that we have women at every table, everywhere, and they're making a huge contribution. Nobody can deny that, right? So if you look at it backwards, you can see how much opportunities we lost because we did not give women the opportunities to use their talents. That was the case, right? And if we look back, we can see that we actively, through state policy, prevented the talents of people who could have made that contribution. Now we are grateful that we are taking advantage of their talent. If you look at it from the immigrants' perspective, we all know that we have, if you order pizza once in a while, like I do sometimes, or you go take a taxi or Uber, who are those people? The vast majority are people who are highly qualified. They hold doctor's degrees, they hold other degrees, and they have a lot of experience as well. What we do to them, we just don't give them opportunities. We have a systemic way of ignoring them because we measure them with what we have developed in a manner that they do not qualify, and therefore they're left with doing menial jobs. If you look at our health workers, for example, there is a health workers crisis in this country. We all know that. There's nobody who will deny that. I think everybody will agree that we cannot find a family doctor. If we go to the hospital, we have a lot of equipment there. The government is investing money. We have the most modern technology on our hospital. But what we don't have is we are not getting our turn. You wait there for hours and hours and hours because there's a shortage of healthcare workers. But I can tell you personally that I know personally people who are doctors, people who are nurses from their country of origin, who have all the qualifications, but we have created an artificial barrier for them so that they cannot get into the healthcare business. We have created that. And we continue to protect that. I can tell you, as was earlier mentioned, I'm an activist in the union, and I can tell you I'm struggling with a number of people who were highly qualified in their own country. I know one person who was a director general of health, having gone through the various stages of medical profession to the extent to become a director general. But here, they are not even getting their classification and their right. So, you know, when we talk about this, like we talk about multiculturalism, multi-faith, the essence is that what are we doing to Canadians? These are Canadians. You know, I heard this, all this, that this is racism. I heard that, you know, like what color of people, we are all human beings. Color doesn't really matter. Accent doesn't really matter because we all speak our mother tongue and we can express, we think in that. I don't think in English, I think in another language. I came to Canada, I learned English, I can express myself sufficiently in English, but I am considered unilingual, right? So I have been denied lots of opportunities in my public service because I'm not officially bilingual. And I always advocate to say, look, you know, what about indigenous languages? Indigenous languages are becoming extinct, right? There are many other languages, and every language has its own beauty, you know, and people can express, and there's a culture behind that. And multiculturalism is but it's not new. Like we all know that, I know time is short, so I'll just be quick, that in Canada, we know this was a country of indigenous people, and it was conquered by European nations. And ultimately, the British conquered everybody else. And the British and Canada became an English-speaking country. It was only after the World War, we just celebrated yesterday, the Remembrance Day, but one of the events is that after World War, there were a lot of Europeans who came to Canada, and that put pressure on changing, because till that time, the authorities in Canada thought the best thing is to have one culture, one language, one people. Everything else is a diversion, and it's negative for the nation, right? It was only once people started coming from European nations that they started pushing for multiculturalism. And the French started pushing for multiculturalism. And now we know that almost 30% of Canada's population is coming from countries other than Europe. And that is pushing that idea. So I know, we can always, of course, there's a lot of good literature to talk about the various cultures, how good they are, how important they are. There's also a question about how the many faiths can exist and coexist, and we can have all this discussion. But I think what I find, what I focus on when we use culture or religion to discriminate against people, against Canadians who have equal rights under the Charter, but we have the ability, we still have given politicians the ability to put the Charter in abeyance by using the authority they have, just like Premier Doug Ford used it against healthcare, against education workers, to say, I can put the charter right to aside so that you cannot go to the court to challenge that. And we have seen in Quebec where Bill 21 was pushed through, again, putting charter rights aside to say, you know what, these women who are choosing to wear a piece of cloth, they are putting Canada at risk. Can you believe that, right? But this happened. I will always say we have to stand for each other. We have to be together. Religion is not there to divide us. It is there to bring us together. Our colors, which are different, whether skin color or hair color or gender, these are there to complement each other. They are our strength. Our cultures, these rich cultures that we have in Canada, and we are proud that we have such rich cultures in Canada, they are there to bring us together, that we participate, we support each other, and everybody, at least in anybody who deals with me, I want to assure them that, look, you know, you come to me as a whole person, and I will respect you for who you are. Whichever faith you follow and whichever place in this world you come from, I will treat you with respect, and I expect to be treated with respect. And my message is expect to be treated with respect. Nobody should feel that because whether they, it's Canada, there are people who have been living here for thousands of years. And there are people who are probably arriving today at Toronto Pearson International Airport as new Canadians. And the beauty of this country is that we are all equal. We have a charter rights. Everybody should feel fully respected as a whole individual, regardless of their identities. And some of these systemic barriers that we are facing, we have to address them. And as I mentioned to you, it is not for helping them. It's not for helping the individual who cannot find a job and is delivering pizza. No, it is for making sure that we use those talents in the service of Canada. That's what this is all about. It's people that you meet, tell them it is not about us helping them. It's about making sure that their talents help this country, every one of us. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. That was really wonderful. A couple of key things. I think social media is a real factor in this whole thing, and what we're seeing and what our people are seeing these days, I think really does play a factor in how we treat others with respect. We see it on social media, people seem to think it's okay to say whatever you want or do whatever you want. So that has to change. And I think many of us have seen it, especially because we all work in the communities. We've seen it maybe even a target to us at least once. Something else that is very interesting, if you did not know, languages. We were talking about languages, and coming from the political world, one thing that I always wondered about, and being a public servant myself, is bilingualism. Why couldn't it be English and or French plus another language, which now you've created this world for, and I brought this up with MPs and ministers, and nobody wants to touch it because it's very sensitive. Until someone doesn't have that courage to come forward and say something like that, we're never going to be able to get really experienced immigrants or people of other cultures into our government. First most spoken language, yes, is English. Second most spoken language in Canada is Mandarin. Third most spoken language in Parliament today is Punjabi. So you could just see the change in our landscape of how things are done and how our communities and our nation has changed. It's not English and French. It is every language under the sun. We are a rainbow. And that's what makes us so beautiful. And people need to respect that. So thank you to you. I'd like to now introduce our very wonderful Marcela Martinez. Marcela Martinez is an entrepreneur and community leader of Colombian origin. Her work and implication with her community has earned her different awards. In 2019, the Embassy of Colombia in Ottawa chose her as the Outstanding Colombian in Canada. In 2021, the Latin American community in the Ottawa-Gatineau region voted her as the Colombian of the Year. Her experience as an IT executive in the IT sector enabled her to lead one of Colombia's most significant optical fiber projects. Her empathy with the community was essential to connect more than 44,000 homes to high-speed internet in the country's most remote areas. When she immigrated to Canada, she decided to apply her transferable skills to work independently in two of her greatest passions, community development and business. Thus, despite having lived in Canada for only 2 years, she was the president of the Colombian Canadian community of Ottawa and Gatineau. In her role, one of her most important achievements was to carry out more than 40 activities that united Colombians around their roots. Thanks to the partnership between the Colombian community led by Marcela and the Consulate of Colombia in Ottawa, the project was feasible. Their joint work helped obtain funds from the Colombian government to implement the activities. As a student of the business management and entrepreneurship program at Algonquin College, Marcela won the BM e-business plan competition. Her speech promoted her venture, Akiani Handmade Jewelry, I hope I said that right, focused on supporting a community of Momposino artisan, is that right? Momposino?
Yes.
Momposino artisan in Colombia. This same entrepreneurship allowed her to win the virtual pitch contest organized by the Réseau d'Action des Entrepreneurs Multicultural. In her cultural promotion work, Marcela is part of the following projects. Member of the folkloric dance group Heritage Colombian based in Gatineau, jury and judge of the World Multicultural Festival in Ottawa, member of the organizing committee of Philbro in Canada, and her academic background, she's a lawyer at the Universidad Libre de Bogota, specialist in telecommunication law and legal informatics from Universidad Externado de Colombia. Sorry, my Spanish is not that good. Graduated with honors from the Business and Management and Entrepreneurship program at Algonquin. In addition to her ongoing promotion of her company, Akiani Handmade Jewelry, Marcela is currently working on other ventures with local entrepreneurs. She also combines all of her business and community work with her current position as assistant to the ambassador of the Republic of Chile in Canada. Welcome, Marcella.
Thank you very much, Sam. Good afternoon, dear panelists. Good afternoon, Jitsi. Thank you very much for creating these spaces and for inviting me. I appreciate it. The question of this panel is whether multi-faith and multiculturalism are the same thing. Let's keep in mind that we are a multicultural community living in Canada, and each of us brings our traditions and religious beliefs to this country. While it is true that the Department of Canadian Heritage promotes intercultural and interfaith understanding and fosters equitable opportunities to participate fully in Canadian society, it is also true that multi-faith must be respected by both citizens and the state. According to the Canadian Charter of Rights, Canadians have the right to profess our religion and culture. Society in general must respect this right. For this reason, policies that prohibit Canadians and permanent residents from wearing religious symbols in specific workplaces are not acceptable. But my question here is, why do we allow this? I want to make a reflection on this point. As immigrants, we should not be passive to this multi-faith repression. Canadians must use the necessary legal and social mechanisms to avoid these arbitrariness. If we don't do it, it will continue taking force in a society that claims to be inclusive. In my opinion, multiculturalism and multi-faith are the same. They coexist. Multi-faith is part of multiculturalism and vice versa. And especially in my case, I live here in Quebec. And during the politician campaign, someone said that we immigrants who live here in Quebec, 80% of us don't speak French and we don't work. They say that, and that is not true. So right now, I just want to ask you, why do we allow them to do this? Why do we allow them to say that? And this is the reason why we have to be immersed in politics, because it's the only way to change this. As Gypsy said, my son, he used to study here at a CEGEP. It is a college here in Quebec. And he also suffered from discrimination. I understand you, Gypsy. I know what it means. My son was so depressed, but fortunately, we immigrants, we are resilient. And the best way to show to these people who don't accept us that we came here to contribute to this country is working hard and be the best people that we can be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcella. You're absolutely right. I think we need to do better for our kids. I worry about my kids as well and how they're struggling. In fact, in the government, I've seen it myself where discrimination is still there today. And as someone who was a candidate, I did see it even during that time, because an immigrant or someone of color is doing something in the community and not everybody likes that. And so I've seen systemic racism myself. I've felt it, and I worry about my children every day about it. So thank you for your words and for bringing that to the forefront. And thank you for doing all you do. As a woman, I'm very proud of you. So thank you. Now, last but not least, I'd like to introduce Eric Topso. I read his bio earlier, and it just made me feel so nice and warm and happy. So Eric is known as Wandara Topso, or MC Wandara. Eric is a master drummer originally from Central African Republic. He has been drumming for over 15 years. Everyone has seen him with his joy of life in different events and as a master of ceremony. He graduated from the University of Ottawa with political science, international development, with specialization in globalization and business administration. He is the owner of Wandara Creations Company Artistique et Culturelle. He is a great community organizer, leader, and cultural entrepreneur. He says, drumming is to empower a human being. With the power of his hands, Wandara Topso is an extraordinary, joyful artist. This special drumming he calls freestyle is a way to liberate your body, mind, and spirit. It is a fusion of singing while playing. With the variation of rhythm from one drum, something magical happens when people join the scene and dance. Drumming is uplifting in his concept and personal development approach. So it is very interactive to create a dynamic social inclusion. He says, always remember, the drum is a special instrument in every country in Africa. The first communication technique was made from a drum. The drum makes a call of any type of celebration. It could be a birthday celebration, funeral, or wedding, and all kinds of general gatherings. Welcome, Wandara.
Do you all hear me? Everybody can hear me? Yes, I want to say Marcela, Martin, Vina, Sam, Wahid, Ruba, Gypsy, I love you. Love you all so much. And I'm feeling so happy, so great. And I can feel your vibration. I feel the love you have for your own life and for the life of people around you. And then this is what we call being on this world of existence. You see, there are so many things that we can even spend this whole night today and then we can still talk about it. So just being on the scene everywhere, drumming and meeting so many people from different area, from different background. I wanted to not have a very academical way of talking today. I want to talk as someone who is seeing concrete things on the field while interacting with people. So there are so many things, but I have to come quickly. I will give some examples so you can understand what I'm talking about. First thing of everything is, do you all consider that people of color are really minority? Can someone really give me that as affirmative answer today? So that will be another question that maybe with Gypsy we can deepen into it. All of us, I have appreciated how you deepen into this understanding of questions and the answers, because this perspective can lead us to something else that I see. Someone already mentioned, Wahid have mentioned the fact that, and also some have came onto the language aspect, which is my second question. Do we really think that British and like English and French is supposed to be the only language that really represents the community or the nation that we are called Canadian today? So asking all those questions, then we can go gradually to now, are we all able to live together peacefully without worrying about certain things due to the fact that my faith is not the same than yours? Due to the fact that I come from a country that when we talk, like let's say for example, I have known people from, let's say you get a Somalian person or you get someone from my country. When we talk, we shout, hey, oh, we tap hands. In Canada, you are a violent person. So I will give you an example so you can understand, okay? So there are a lot of people who have brought to Canada because their country have been into wars, into traumas. They have come to Canada, and then there was no system put in place to tackle psychological challenges, okay, stress, traumas that are deepened within them. But you want them to come because they have arrived in Canada, then everything is okay. You leave them like this. And after, you will be the first to say they are violent. You will be the first to say they are Muslims, so they are terrorists, they are this, and then you have to go and treat them in a very unkind way. I'm just talking as from what I have seen, and then all of you after you can break this down, because you come out with some maybe solutions, way that you interact with people in a professional level, in a community level, and maybe like you all have said, we can come out with some maybe a group of people who can advocate for this multi-faith and multiculturalism as we are living along in the same country. So the question I've been asking myself is, can we always live together despite the difference of faith, and also despite the fact that where I come from has a richness? Okay, the food you eat, let's break it down. When we talk about culture, what do we talk about? The way I dress up, the language I speak, the way I see myself, the way I interact with people, the way I cook my food, the way there are certain things I don't do. Let's say we call them values. All that puts me together and build me, and you call it identity. Because when you talk about this, then you say, oh, this is Wandara, this is Eric we are talking about. That means what? You're talking about someone from India, someone from, and so on. You see? This is supposed to be a power that reinforces the quality of life we are living as a Canadians. Now, let me break it down a little bit. Is it because in the system they said being a Canadian is a privilege? How could it that you are a Canadian like other Canadian, but when comes certain things, you are subject to deportation to your country of origin? Okay, that means what? The inclusivity has not even come into place, because you are not included, despite the fact that you are called a citizen, you have the Canadian passport, but you're not necessarily included. This is a diversion. Do we accept that? Like you all said, there are things that we are supposed to stand up for. So, and then I was also mentioning, I was thinking about being as an immigrant in Quebec side, because now Marcela has mentioned it. I will go quickly to some examples, and you understand what we are talking about. The fact of having a multicultural. So I will just break it down, okay? Multiculturalism means what? We have a variety of cultures coming together, living together, interacting. And this is the riches that we have. And someone was asking, I think at the beginning, Merchant asked, what is being Canadian? To me, I always explain to people that being Canadian is putting together all the riches that we have brought all over the place from our cultures, and that make the Canada that we're talking about. If you take it away, there is nothing. Take all your values away, there is nothing, believe me. So talking about being Canadian means the research, the good things, the good qualities, and all the resilience and capacity buildings and all that we have, we put together, and that's what makes Canada what it is. Now when we go back to Quebec side, I know the history of Quebec is a particular one. But when you come to being on Quebec soil, there is always a need for the society to differentiate you as an immigrant from those who are the descendant of those who are called French Canadians. who are the one who have the chance to be there at the beginning of building the Quebec society. They call themselves the pure land. Pure land means those who are the pure Quebecois. So anybody else around is not a pure Quebecois. So when you go to the schools, you go to the work, you go to anything, workplace and all that, all this is reflected. So how you are being included in a workplace is the pure land Quebecois accepting you as a minority to get in there. Now, if they don't accept you, there is always a reason to mistreat you, to condescend you, to down you in a very cultural way, and it's subjective. It's just subtle. You cannot see it, but it's there. It's hurting you. It's destroying you. Sometimes you go, even you get sick or you resign from the work, and that's how it goes. So coming back to defining multi-faith and multiculturalism, it becomes hard, because if you talk about accepting multiculturals cultures within the society, they see it as a threat. The threat comes because if you have to include other people within the system, then the dominant ones would not be okay. It's unsafe for them to continue manipulating and misleading and all that. So I'm talking my heart, okay? Because certain things must be done, certain things must change. I know also a lot of immigrants who are supported by Quebec system as immigration system, but they can't just stand to be in Quebec due to racism, due to neglective way, due to difficulties to just be included within the system. So they have moved to Ontario, or they go to British Columbia and all that. So I don't know. I'll have so much to say. I have so much to say, but I want to come to the fact that you see the multiculturalism is seen, for example, as a tool, let's say a tool for domination of what they called the non-pure pure Quebecois. It's also the same thing within the general Canada side, which is if we accept more and more cultures to become part of the system that we consider their position and all that, then the so-called majority, which is really minority, because it's a political game. I will break it down for you, okay? When in a political way we talk about minority, it's the appropriate synonym is marginalization. Minorization is marginalization, which is what? Which is there are some people with some specific needs that are and culture that are particular, that doesn't fit with the global frame built by the system called majority. So our needs, our orientations and things are not fitting within the majority system. So to put you aside, we should put you aside. And if you don't organize yourself to fulfill your need, that's your problem. But however, if you dare to come to get some work from the majority, I have to filter you. So I want to know how many of the minority, so-called, are coming in. So I want to know exactly, are you from China? Are you from Africa? Are you from Latin America? Are you from India? I want to know you are from the color, but I want to identify how many of you as a statistic are coming in to break down the works that I have from the majority. So you don't understand, but you go claim that, oh yes, now it's inclusive, they're accepting more immigrants from the minorities to be part of it. Believe me or not, if you have no qualification, if you are not really qualified enough to get this job, nobody will give it to you because of your color. However, I want to say, I don't want to take all the time. Sam, you are the MC today. I don't want to take all the time, but my reflection is deepening. And the whole thing I want to say is to conclude is that despite the faith, despite our cultures, we are supposed to have a positive interaction within the society in everywhere we live. We should live in peace, and also living together should be a research that reinforce this Canada like positive, like politically, economically, socially, and also with spiritually, because we are all spiritual beings. Doesn't matter how we connect to the divine creator. That's what we're talking about. Multiple faith is different way that we are all connected to the same source of life, same conscience. And we are all at certain level the same. In the eyes of the divine creator, we are all just one family. And every part of the humanity is just like the branches of the same tree. We are all the fruits of the same tree. And then let's see each other this way. And then you will see how beautiful it is. Thank you so much. Keep your smile, keep your positive vibration anywhere you go. Keep the love you have deep inside, because it enhances your being and also those around you.
Thank you, Wanda. Your passion and your love for communities and multiculturalism is really respectable. And you're right. Respect, I think, is the most highest pillar you can use. For me, that is a big one for me, is always be mindful and respectful of people around you with empathy and kindness, and always be aware, always be aware. Education is probably the biggest thing for me in this, that we make sure we continue to educate people and have patience. Not everybody has the patience or knows what they're doing. Sometimes use your patience. So I know we are quite over time, so I'm going to turn over to Alder to say a few words, and then Gypsy will take wrap up right from there.
Well, thank you, Sam. It's just something what Tumba said about like this trauma. I always talk about people. For us as the Algonquin, we met the explorers in 1604, Samuel de Champlain, and and looking back, what happened to as well is when he arrived on our shores, what was going on in Europe was the religious wars, and they were brutal. And what happened is, if I was a famous explorer, I'd take my chances on the sea with those savages across the ocean, because how brutal it was in Europe. So what the elders talk about is the people who landed on our shores a lot of times were escaping oppression and violence. And it's still the same today. So we suffer from internalized oppression and historical trauma, even more recently with this residential school. And as we're healing from that also too as well, there's people need to understand too as well, where do you come from and why did your family come to Turtle Island, to our lands here? And a lot of times it was because of escaping violence and trauma. So as we heal, we all need to heal, because look at what we're doing to this earth. The other part is, there was a mention of the word being conquered. We're not conquered. That was through war in the United States too. We signed peace and friendship treaties with the French and the British, with the understanding is, stay out of our wars. This is not your war. You continue on your way of life while we fight over your lands and resources. Because when they came here, they ascertained pretty damn fast, if the Indians sided with one or the other, the British or the French, they're at a disadvantage. So they had peace treaties, and they didn't involve the land like they do the treaties out west. So that's why when we say our lands are unceded here, meaning we didn't sign treaty giving up the lands, but they always want to close that door. And right now they have one in Ontario, which is pretty not very good. But at the same time too as well, no, we have a right to be here. This is our land and our language. And I like that where they said, what about an indigenous language here? It's not just French and English. Our language ties us to the land because it's very expressive. And we've been here for thousands of years as other indigenous people. So again, too, as well, I understand the immigration. And I see that too as well, because there's more understanding of this discrimination. And the discrimination at the end of the day goes with your skin color a lot of the times. So we see that there's more of a voice, and that's why this conversation is good today. So I say miigwech.
Thank you, Alder McGregor. I'd like to turn it over for wrap up to Gypsy, but before I do, I just want to say thank you to everyone who is here. It's been wonderful for me to be here in your presence, and I'm honored. And also to Gypsy, you are a force. And I thank you for everything you do for the community and what you promote and how you do it with such, respect and passion and with so much love. And we all, like my sister too, we love you, and we love everything you stand for and everything you do. So thank you, and continue on with doing what you do, because you are a trailblazer and we are proud of you, proud of you.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you to all of you for being here today and, reflecting your experiences and your knowledge about the topic. In fact, to conclude, I would like to say that, education about anti-racism, about multiculturalism, and even multi-faith in the Canadian cultural mosaic should start at the school level, at the nursery level, when children start playing with dolls of different colors, where the models are not only white, but black, brown, all colors. This color is a big factor. We cannot disagree with that. And of course, religion is another factor. That's why the topic is multi-faith. There's Islamophobia in Canada and USA, throughout the world, especially in the European nations and even in India. Very sad about it. I'm from a multicultural country where we have different faiths and different cultures, India. But to tell you frankly, I'm sad about everything happening there. I don't support anything which is against multi-faith or against multiculturalism. And there will be abolition of systemic racism and racism at all levels once our children, our next generation, learns and make others aware, begin teaching, begin discussion. And the saddest part is they don't participate. They have to participate in these multicultural events. They have to learn. It's not only science, history, geography, maths, and English and French. They have to know what is multiculturalism and to know all the cultures. Then we can abolish systemic racism. In the long run, it will take some time. It has not been taught everywhere. I know one Iraqi student, a girl, who's my daughter's age. She is the board of trustee representing the student. She is studying in, Sir Wilfrid Laurier School. Now she says, they say that they are diverse, inclusive, and they follow equitable principles, but they are very racial. They just show superficially and take some people who would support them, who would keep quiet. They don't listen to us. They don't follow our suggestions. They don't take inputs. And Daljit ji was saying the same thing. And regarding languages, yes, I support Sam. It's I have not been able to learn French till today. I know a few words. And that's not my fault, I was very busy doing other things, business. And maybe that's why, I couldn't just, communicate more with people. But we have a Francophone community in the festival this time. Marcella knows, the French Public Board, the French Catholic Board, the French College is sponsoring. They are coming to sponsor multiculturalism. So that's a step forward, Marcella. So they are coming forward to support multiculturalism. They're sponsoring us and they want to support multiculturalism. So that is a great, we want to involve the boards. We want to collaborate with the boards, and we want to really, really work with the children and the board, because that's where it starts. It's like systemic racism is everywhere, but it starts from the school level. People should be aware. They have to change their mentality that we are not black, white, we are equal. Like the color is just due to the suntan. That's all. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Big one.
So I invite all of you on the 24th or 27th of November. So all of you should be there. You should come and enjoy. Eric is one of the masters of ceremony, and Marcella is one of the jury, one of the judges at the festival. She's in the executive committee, and all of you should come, and all of you should enjoy and see what's happening. Mr. Khan, please invite all your colleagues and all your friends, and please come and enjoy the festival. See what we are doing. We are trying our best. I won't say we are doing the best. We don't have that much funds, but it'll be a lot of people, but we will do something unique together. Thank you so much. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Gypsy and Sam and everybody. Really enjoyed. Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll give you the YouTube. We'll do the YouTube.